It's my pleasure to welcome you here to the Clark Howard Show. You know, our mission is to serve you with advice and information that empowers you so you make better financial decisions in your life. I hope you enjoy our podcast. If you do, share this episode with a friend. Or if you watch our YouTube show, why don't you let a friend know about it? Now, this one may or may not be the one you specifically share with a friend. Because we're starting out with something I remember years ago, many decades ago when we started Clark Stinks. We got an impassioned plea from a marketing person to not do this. Why would you market yourself as being dumb? Actually, it's smart as could be. Because I'm just a guy. There are things I'm going to be good about, not good about, whatever. And we get in our channels, we get in our habits. I love how Clark Stinks makes me think. And I learn from them. So that's what we're starting with. And you know something else that is a little bit of a rough ride? What this year's graduates of high school or technical school or college are experiencing at this moment in the job market. We're going to talk about that. But now it's time to talk about me messing up.
I should have never encouraged you to speak.
You must think I'm pretty stupid.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
Well, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong.
Maybe you're right, pal.
Nothing stinky to report, but Clark seems to be confused about why some companies ask for your cell phone carrier. The answer is cost savings. A company can send notifications from an email server that appear as a text on a phone. As a software developer for 20 plus years, I've implemented such notifications. Since costs for sending texts are greater than sending emails, companies often try to send such messages via email to save money. The problem is that the format is the number, the @ symbol, and a different email domain for each carrier. Here is a link to explain where to send the email for Clark's beloved Google Fi. My church also uses a system to notify parents of sick kids that will send emails which are received as text messages by the parents during a church service. Then the parents know to come check on their kids quickly. Bill, the EA software developer from West Virginia.
Well, Bill, thank you, because I have never known. This is a perfect example of why we do Clark Stinks, because I've always wondered out loud, why is it when I'm giving my phone number, some companies ask for who my cell carrier is? And this is perfect. Thank you.
I don't want to relate anything that Clark could possibly stink. He can't possibly know every detail on financing, taxes, or travel. Clark is flippantly referring that Vanguard has an ETF for everything, and an investor can just decide what is right for them, either a mutual fund or an ETF. According to Vanguard's website, they currently have 267 mutual funds and 93 ETFs. The problem is that an investor cannot switch from owning a mutual fund to an ETF in many scenarios without incurring a large tax obligation. If an investor had invested in Vanguard mutual funds that were actively managed prior to the evolution of ETFs, and even today there are no ETF equivalents, these funds would be some of Vanguard's most popular actively managed: Wellington, Wellesley, and Prime Cap series. The fund name does not have to contain Wellington, Wellesley, or Prime. For example, VDIGX, Vanguard Dividend Growth, is advised by Wellington Management with no equivalent ETF. There are currently several Vanguard's index funds that can be converted tax-free to ETFs. If you're just starting to invest, I see no reason to invest in a mutual fund. An ETF almost always has the advantage of lower expense ratios, no minimum investments, trading flexibility, and favorable tax implications. Craig,
thank you very much. And that was fairly technical for a lot of people listening or watching, but everything you said is correct. The reason ETFs are growing so quickly, exchange-traded funds, versus their cousin or sibling index funds, is that ETFs do have potentially lower costs. They're much more flexible. They are a better vehicle, and that's why Vanguard and everyone else is growing so quickly in the exchange traded fund area. Now, you bring up Wellington. Wellington is something that, except for people that are very involved in investing, won't be familiar with. It is a very, very well-run and researched organization that does an unusual thing. It provides what are known as actively managed mutual funds that have professional management, but at the same time have very, very low costs, relatively speaking, for a managed fund. I don't use managed funds. I use ETFs and I use index funds. But there are people who really like the philosophies of a lot of Wellington funds. And you're right, there's no equivalent tax-free where you can do an exchange. There's no ETF for a lot of them yet. And we'll see how that changes over time.
Mr. Howard, I'm holding my nose right now. Due to the rotten egg stench coming from a recent podcast, there will always be pros and cons to privatizing air traffic control. You mentioned that Air Canada has successfully rolled out privatization of air traffic control, and they're one of the busiest airspaces in the world.
Not Air Canada, Canada, the country Canada.
Okay.
NAV Canada is the name of the organization.
In 2024, Air Canada recorded 444,000 operations. This is equivalent to 9 days of air traffic in the United States. In a Fox Business article, NTSB Vice Chair Bruce Landsberg is quoted as saying, "Experience has shown that privatizing ATC systems like those in Canada, the UK, and elsewhere are troubled by concerns over safety, traffic delays, technical issues, financial instability, and shortages of air traffic controllers. Comparing a private system like Air Canada to the U.S.
You keep saying Air Canada.
That's what they wrote.
NAV Canada. Yeah.
Is equivalent to comparing to a Medicare Advantage plan with a Roth 401k. The MAPD sounds great in the brochure, but when you have to use it, it's not anything like the brochure said. Our system is so complex, integrated with national security and a driving force of this country's GDP that I think you completely missed the mark on this. The question isn't how we privatize the air traffic system, it should be how we modernize it. Automation, safety tools, and autonomous flights for aircraft above 10,000 feet would be a place to focus our energy for this conversation. John.
John, thank you very much. And you pointed out in the very last thing you said what the problem has been with air traffic control being a governmental task. The equipment that the controllers have in the towers, the technology is so obsolete because it is so difficult through the government procurement process to keep technology modern and up to date. If you have a private nonprofit corporation running air traffic control, you will have modern equipment available, the most up-to-date stuff, for the individuals who are doing an incredible job right now under ridiculously difficult circumstances, working in the air traffic control centers and the towers. And understand this, John, I start everything from a bias, and we all have our biases, we all have our blinders. For me, I'm always like, well, my perspective is, can we do this better in private hands than doing it in government? I'm not hostile to government. I just believe that government, even when people mean well, the bureaucracy kind of grinds progress down to a snail's pace. And that's why purpose-built functions done in the private nonprofit sector, I believe, can be more efficient, more cost-efficient, and actually improve the safety margin by having modern equipment in there. And that's just where my head's at.
As a mom of 2 teenage drivers with a household total of 4 cars to insure and a policy renewal coming up soon, I was excited to listen to your podcast about the best auto insurance. I understand the main point was that some of the best service insurers might be companies most of us have never heard of, but during the segment you mentioned at least 2 companies as being rich people insurers. What does that even mean? Do you need a certain level of assets to qualify for coverage? Are the rates so high that only wealthy people can afford them? Please keep in mind that your listeners span the entire financial spectrum. We're all looking for ways to save money regardless of our income level. Thanks for everything you do, Karen.
Karen, thank you. Okay, so what is a rich people's insurer? All right, so there are people who, because of their level of wealth, tend to be too hot to handle for a lot of traditional insurers for auto and homeowners. And so there are companies that specialize in serving people that have greater assets that other insurers are worried are a lawsuit magnet. And so the largest of these is a company called Chubb. And the other is a smaller one called Pure. There used to be a third, but they're out of the market now because they couldn't calculate risk well for wealthier people. And there may be other smaller ones that do what I would call a form of specialty insurance for the thin sliver of Americans who have a great deal of wealth and create real liability risk for the insurers, not only for themselves as a wealthy person is insured, but also for their insurer.
Architect here. I wanted to write in about the recent Clark stinks on spray foam insulation. In the architectural industry, spray foam is very polarizing. On banks not issuing mortgages to homes with spray foam, that has been true in the UK, not in the US. Getting spray foam installed in an existing house can be problematic based on how the building envelope was originally designed and the climate of the area. Spray foam can create a water vapor barrier inside a wall or attic that was originally designed for airflow through to allow drying. This can cause water condensation to build up and cause the wood structure to rot. Another problem with spray foam is that because the material is mixed on site, there is a higher risk that the proportions will be incorrect and insulation will not function properly. Both of these reasons are why having an installer who is very experienced and well educated on building science is imperative. Too many people are installing this without understanding what they're doing. The final issue with spray foam is if utilities, electrical, plumbing, etc., are in the area where the spray foam is being installed, any modification will be much more expensive. Spray foam can be a great material in new construction when the building envelope is thoughtfully designed, but I'm always hesitant to recommend it in a remodel situation. Alex.
Alex, thank you. And, after this came up before, in Clark Stinks, I did what I promised. I did a lot of reading on it, and there are potential problems in a retrofit of an existing home, just as you referred to here, Alex, and as others did in the Clark Stinks post. And so much of it is in the area you referred to, Alex, and others did as well. People who are doing installation of spray foam who don't really know what they're doing. How would you and I, as a consumer, know how to pick a firm that actually really knows what it's doing with the spray foam insulation? And so based on what I have heard in our Clark Stinks, based on the reading I've done, following up on what you've just said, Alex, flippantly, I should never refer again to spray foam as a solution for a retrofit in an existing house structure. And I appreciate so much all the passion on this topic from so many posts that Alex and others represent a small sample of the number of people who took time to write in on the issue of spray foam insulation.
And Kirby in Austin, Texas also wanted to say that the last Clark Stinks poster about the rates going up after installing spray foam, that it's because of the big freeze in Texas, the electric rates have increased to make the grid more reliable. And Kirby says his cost per kilowatt hour is almost doubled. Okay, you stink like leaving the windows open when the garbage truck comes by. Speaking of windows, your advice not to replace the home windows with the glass panes coming apart was terrible. You only talked about return on investment of the expense on the sale of a house. You should have mentioned the loss that will be deducted from the sale price by buyers wanting concessions for bad windows. This was my experience buying a beautiful custom-made house from 1978, but it had wood-framed single-glazed windows with the sashes warped shut and panes falling out. They leaked air like a sieve and were unsafe. To get out of the house in a fire, you'd have to break the windows out to escape.
Wow.
We demanded concessions from the seller and negotiated $20,000 off the price, which was only half of what it cost us to replace them with custom-made double-glazed Marvin windows, but it had to be done. So I disagree with your comment that a buyer wouldn't notice the condition of windows and take it into account in the offer price. The owner may now get 100% of the expense back, but it doesn't make financial sense for them to live with defective windows, pay more in energy costs, and lose money in a sale because of it. Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, thank you very much. So I answered that question originally strictly from a cost perspective. And as you shared, you ended up having to spend twice what the seller concession was. If you're in a house a long time, your windows have basically fallen apart. That is a repair you would do in your home like any other. What I'm referring to most often with the questions I get about windows is that if you're taking a window that still works, still there, working fine, and you replace it with a new window for whatever reason, supposedly much more energy efficient, whatever, you will never make back the cost of what those windows cost you to put in energy savings. Yes, your energy bills may be lower, but you won't make up that cost.
You must not have done your homework because you missed the mark on skimmers. You focused on telling us to use a card with a chip. Don't you know that even a card with a chip that is inserted instead of swiped can still be compromised? It is called shimming. Instead, you should have focused on telling everyone to use tap to pay whenever they can. Shame on you, Clark. That's strong. This isn't the first time I've heard you say something that was completely off base, but it's the first time I had the courage to write and tell you. Don't worry, I will still listen to your program. Chances are I will catch you messing up again, Joni.
Joni, thank you. Okay, so everything's a hierarchy, and tap to pay is the most secure way for you to pay now with your iPhone or Android, or using tap to pay with a card. Anything else has more security risk because when you're doing tap to pay, it is generating a unique code that even if a criminal intercepts it, they have no useful information. A chip is still more secure than a swipe because I can get a third grader to develop a skimmer that will steal the information from the magnetic strip on the back of a card. It is a more sophisticated crime and not as frequent for people to be able to steal the information from a chip encoded card. But the most important thing I think you and I, Joni, would agree on is there are times that I am completely off base. And that is exactly why we do Clark Stings. To get me to clarify something I said in a bad way, to get me to correct information that I said that was wrong, to learn new things that I had not thought about or heard about. And that's why I love, Joni, that you took the time, and you're going to be on the lookout for me, as you said, messing up again. I love it. So thank you for taking the time to write your Clark Stings. And thank you to everybody else who took the time to post a Clark Stings, because we're all in this together. We all learn from each other. Coming up ahead, I'm going to talk about the job market is not as good as it was, but it's not bad. How do you handle that if you've just gotten out of school at any level? So you graduated from high school, and you're not going on to additional education or training. You've been in some kind of community college, technical college, or you've graduated from college. And the job market is not as friendly to you as it was the last 3 years. Job market was much stronger for college graduates in 22, 23, and 24. But I want to tell you, if I'm talking to you and you are like feeling anxious about finding that job out of school, that this is not the best of times for job seekers like the last 3 years were coming out of school. But absolutely, this is not the worst of times. If you talk to an aunt or an uncle or a much older brother or sister who came of age coming out of school of whatever level 15 years ago during the Great Recession, they did come into a job market of doom and gloom and extremely high unemployment. Even though openings are not as plentiful today as they have been the last 3 years, the unemployment rate at 4-point-something% is phenomenally low. And by the way, I want you listening, if you're way past school and you found yourself in a layoff situation, the fact that the job creation each month is still good, and there's some amount of job rotation going on, means that you are going to have to work harder to find the next job. But it's not a doom and gloom time. For you, and going back to the core when I want to talk about students who have just finished school, if you only completed high school and you're not finding the job market to be particularly friendly, there are a lot of trades, and you don't want to go to college, if that's you. There are a lot of trades that are extremely short of workers, that face an aging workforce, that offer really nice levels of pay and potential for income growth over the years. And I would really encourage you, as a recent high school graduate who's finding the reality of the job market not to your liking, that you really think about looking at jobs that you can apprentice at, or jobs that require you go to a state-supported technical college and get the skills that will give you a really solid kind of thing. Aircraft mechanic, auto mechanic, heating and air conditioning, plumbing, electrician. Some of these are ones you can do an apprenticeship route, school route, or combination of the two. Those are just a small number of examples of things that will get you a solid path to a solid employment cycle in front of you. If you finished a technical college, if you have a skill in one of the areas that are sought after, don't worry that there's a slowdown in the economy. It's not a deep dive, and you're still needed in the skill areas in which you've trained. The hardest picture is for recent college graduates who don't have a lot of work experience other than part-time jobs you may have had in school over the years. That's the hardest path. And so you may have to start at something that is something you're like, well, I didn't need to go to college to get this job. Don't let that freak you out. It's just a fact that you may be doing something that is your first job that gets you some work experience, gets you out there, and it will lead somewhere. It does. And have faith in yourself. Now, I want to talk about people who are headed into college. The most important thing you can do while you're in college, in addition to whatever major you pick, is to get work experience in the field in some way while you're in school. There are schools that their whole academic setup is based on that. That's why I'm obsessed with Boston University, because they have the greatest success at their graduates getting jobs in their chosen career than any school in America, because the whole curriculum is set up so by the time you graduate, which takes longer, you have years of work experience in your field.
Doesn't Northeastern do that?
Oh, that's what I said. I said Boston University. I'm sorry, I meant Northeastern. Thank you for correcting me.
Sure.
There are what, 47 colleges in Boston?
Yes.
Yeah, and we went to see a lot of them with my middle child, Steffi, when she was looking at colleges. Yeah, it's Northeastern. I'm sorry. Boston University's great in hockey. Northeastern is where, if you want a great launch into a career, Northeastern is amazing. They're hockey too, aren't they?
They have a great hockey team, as does Boston College. Anyway.
Just because you and your daughter went to Boston College, you got to get in the Boston College
Please,
reference.
BU alums, don't send us hate mail. They're more than hockey. It's a great university. All right, let's go to questions. Kim in Arkansas says, we use Monarch Money to track our expenses, and the new feature being offered is to sync Amazon purchases. Although it sounds fantastic as an easier way to categorize purchases, I just wanted to check to see if this throws up any red flags for you as far as security.
So it all depends how the information scraped from Amazon. If Monarch has one of these modern systems for scraping, they don't have stored in their system your password. That's where the vulnerability would be created. If they have your username and password for Amazon, that's the risk. As long as they don't, it's great that they track them. But I would like an experiment from you for a while, Kim. I want you to compare. You're from Arkansas, the home of Walmart, and you're buying from Amazon? Anyway, day in and day out, Walmart, and particularly the warehouse clubs, over time, you'll spend less money than you would with Amazon. And so in addition to tracking your Amazon purchases, take some time comparing what it would be buying from another retailer that might lower your overall costs of your purchases.
Shawn in Connecticut says, my company uses Empower for our retirement plans. I have a number of my bank accounts, credit union accounts, annuities, and 401k accounts linked to my Empower page, so I can easily look in one place for much of my retirement information. Did I hear you tell a listener during one of your podcasts not to link accounts for security purposes, or were you just referring to something else?
I don't remember the context of that, but the answer in your situation is virtually identical to with Kim's thing. I don't know how Empower's dashboard works. They call dashboards, screen scrapers, whatever. But if they are using the most modern technology where they are not capturing your username and password from the various bank accounts, your credit union account, all the stuff that you're linking in there, and they suffer a data breach, that none of that information is available where you're laying out on a silver platter for criminals all your usernames and passwords, as long as they use a modern system for creating that financial dashboard, you're absolutely fine. I did want to say one thing about Empower. Empower plans can be more expensive than other providers of 401ks. And I like for people with Empower plans to spend more time looking at the expenses of the various funds being offered in the plan to make sure that you're holding down expenses as much as you can and keeping proper allocations in your plan so that the money is there for you later for retirement and not going to them in various expenses.
Okay, this came in from Massimo in New Jersey. I lost 2 of my credit cards, which fell out of my wallet. Within 2 hours, I received an alert from Capital One asking if I spent $4,700 at Best Buy.
How do you like that big screen TV?
I immediately contacted them that this was not my charge. I checked my other cards and noticed another charge on my Costco City card for $914 at the Dollar Tree, also within 2 hours of losing the card.
Okay, that's not possible.
Both cards have credited the amounts to me. My questions are, 1, how are these frauds being investigated? And 2, who is responsible for the charges? The credit card company or the merchant? Why didn't Citi alert me about the $914 at Dollar Tree before I identified it as fraud? I never go to Dollar Tree, and who would spend $914 there? That should have been a very suspicious transaction.
What in the world would somebody spend $900? Okay, so let's be realistic for a second. somebody was probably fencing goods from there.
Yes, of
So
course,
it would
yeah.
be something like brand name razor blades, because they do sell brand name Dollar Tree. It'd be something that's fenceable that can be sold off somewhere else. But that would be weird because, I don't know, you have a Citibank Visa. Mm-hmm. I'll go somewhere and I'll try to buy something for $3.80 and they don't
think it's
approve
fraud,
it.
yeah.
Because it's out of my normal pattern.
Yep.
Be completely out of your pattern. Something went
It
wrong.
probably wouldn't flag you spending money at Dollar Tree, though.
No, it would not flag me at Dollar Tree. You know the funny one, American Express. Whenever I would use American Express at Walmart, immediately they'd say, declined.
Yeah.
I guess it doesn't fit the pattern of where American Express card would be used. But to your questions, first of all, why am I making light about it? You're not responsible for any of this. Mm-hmm. Two, obviously the fraud system at Capital One, the fraud system at Citibank, that usually are pretty effective, both failed in this case.
Well, Capital One caught it.
After the purchase, I thought. I thought they bought the 47. See, they asked if
oh, yeah. Okay, they did after. Yeah.
if Massimo had spent the 4,700. So that meant it had already apparently happened. Mm-hmm. That's unusual. That would have made it through the fraud system.
But both cards are
One.
taking responsibility. So
They take responsibility. The merchant does not lose the money if card was present and the card was put through their system either as a swipe, a chip, or a tap. The merchant's protected. On the other hand, if it was BestBuy.com, Best Buy gets stuck with the losses. The risk to merchants is so much higher with an online sale than it is an in-person sale. So I think I answered, why didn't Citi alert you about Dollar Tree? I will never understand that. Complete failure of their fraud detection system. Number one, if it doesn't fit your pattern of where you shop. And number two, come on. $900+ at Dollar Tree, even at $1.25 Tree now. That's a lot of money.
I feel bad for the clerk having to count up all those, whatever it was. It's got to be.
They can't count them anymore. They have to actually scan them now.
Oh, wow. That must have taken forever.
Yeah, full inventory. Well, that manager's like, wow, we had a great day today. Look at our sales. Mm-hmm. Well, thank you all for joining us this week on the podcast. And I hope that you're having a great weekend in front of you and can't wait to be with you next week. Our Monday show will be Bastille Day, and we will celebrate Bastille Day with you on the podcast. And enjoy yourself, but be careful with your money. Think about how can you save more, spend less, and avoid getting ripped off all this summer weekend.